Welcome to another episode of Same Page. My name is Sarah Simajust.
And I'm Lenard.
We are today on episode 6
Yeah.
of our new vlog.
Mm-hmm.
We would like to talk about fighting in silence.
Now, what is fighting in silence?
Now, fighting in silence means being upset with your partner, but not talking about it. So you're literally around each other around the house, moaning and just not talking, period. But in your mind, you're having this battle about this argument that you guys had. So that's how we define fighting in silence.
And unfortunately, it's something that we do quite often.
Quite often, yes.
And usually it stems because a lot of times we haven't had the discussion to really try to resolve the issue.
Mm-hmm. And it is a pattern that we're trying to break, but at least for me, it is very, very difficult. I think before I entered this relationship with Len, I wasn't really used to expressing my feelings. I was just, upset in silence, give people the silent treatment, and then they would know I would be upset. Sometimes they would know why, but not always. And I was just happy to make them feel bad rather than really trying to resolve the situation.
And for me, in my past relationships, I didn't really challenge myself to push through those difficult periods. So a lot of times when things got tough, I just exited, to put it simply.
Like exited the relationship?
The relationship.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad you broke that pattern.
Yes.
So for us, for example, if we had an argument, I'm typically giving Leonard the silent treatment, and I'm upset that he's just in the house. If I'm watching TV and he comes and sits beside me, I'm like, don't you have any other place to be? And that's all going on in my head. Mm-hmm. And I will create an entire scenario about when we do talk about it, what it's going to look like. So in my mind, I say this and he says that back. And then I say this, then I break a plate, then I throw a lamp at him, then I put him in a chokehold.
That would never happen.
I'm having this entire fight with him in my head of how I think it's going to go. And that fight in my head is typically so far from the reality, but I just created. And in my head, we're already divorced. Like, how are we going to split the house? Like, all of these things. But when we end up talking about it, it is nothing. So far, the reality is so far different. It's so different from what I imagined. And I'm like, oh, why do I do this? But it also festers a lot of negative emotions, and I get more angry at him because of the fight that I'm creating in my head, the argument that I'm creating in my head, rather than the actual reason that I'm angry at him.
Now, unlike Sarah, I'm quite different. I won't create these scenarios in my head, but I will try to reflect and to go back and see, okay, what would cause Sarah to give me the silent treatment, and then also I tend to be a little passive aggressive at times, only because I don't want to dive into a conversation when we're both kind of heated in the moment of an argument. Excuse me. And plus, I like to also just reflect on things and then address it when we're hopefully both have calmer. We're both under calmer circumstances, or both just calmer heads.
Yeah, and that actually, I didn't know that's what he was doing. I just felt like he didn't want to address the issue, so that got me more upset. The longer time passed before attacking the issue and talking about it, the more I felt he didn't care. The more I felt I was kind of lonely in this argument. I'm like, am I the only person who really saw what you did? Didn't you see what you did? And again, the whole argument in my head and creating the scenario. So I didn't know that's what he was doing. So it's nice to know now, from having, multiple discussions with him about these silent fights. I know now that's what he's doing, but in the past I didn't. So that created a little bit of resentment and anger.
A little bit of tension.
Tension. Yeah.
And also, actually, this is one of the main reasons why we sought help. We went to get some therapy on it, trying to be a little proactive, even though it stems from a couple of incidents, but we still wanted to try to get help before it got real bad to a point where we really did not like each other or really resented each other and all that stuff. And from my experience, even though it's a topic that's kind of like taboo in our culture,
You mean getting therapy?
Yeah, to seek help and to get therapy. I thought it was great. Now, mind you, we had a very good therapist who and she was able to give us some good tools and basically kind of break down as to like why we acted a certain way at times.
Yeah, and I think every couple, you have to find the therapist or the people that fit you, that fit your relationship. It's kind of like a glove, right? You have to find the one that fits. We luckily found someone right away, and I think it just helped us really know how to attack the problem and how to talk about it rather than either the silent treatment, which was not effective, or yelling at each other, which we didn't really do, or me kind of just walking away altogether and just leaving for a long period of time. I think that really gave us the tool to not only address the issue effectively, but sooner than later, you know, not leaving a lot of time.
And I know for me, like one thing that I really got out of the therapy was that to really focus on how if Sarah did something to me, how did it make me feel compared to just attacking her on what I perceived her bad behavior to be, or something that I did not necessarily agree with. Instead, kind of like flip the script back on me, say how I felt while she did this, and then start a conversation that way instead of me attacking her.
Yeah, so it's kind of just reflecting on your action rather than you're a bad person and putting the blame on a person. So this action led to this feeling.
Yes.
So in the future, how can you change this action so that it doesn't lead to this feeling or it leads to a better feeling? Yes. So that's kind of how we approach the situation now. I mean, it doesn't always come out as eloquently and, you know, when we're arguing, but we are both aware that it's not the person's fault per se. It's just that in the moment, the person, you know, probably didn't mean to do you any wrong, but that action led to a certain feeling, and how can we resolve that? So I think it gave us the right tools to really attack the arguments rather than blaming each other. Yeah. What did we used to do in the past? I want to talk about kind of like where we came from, and then we already kind of talked about what we do now. Yeah. But do you remember when we were first dating? What that looked like?
Well, I know for sure that we went like almost a week without talking at times.
Yeah, the silent treatment. I'm really good at that.
Yeah, and especially when you're living in the same house, and we don't necessarily have a big house, so it's like there's only a couple of rooms that you can kind of hide, but eventually you will cross each other. And eventually we'll share the same space, and that would be very awkward. And
it felt uncomfortable, right? Even though I felt like I was punishing him for giving him the silent treatment. And actually, I would also, I mean, I don't know if you ever really noticed, but if I knew that we had to go somewhere together and that you wanted me to be there, I would purposely say that I didn't want to go to there. Yes, because I was kind of angry at you. But also because I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and if we are not in a situation or in a state that we are good, we're happy, we can laugh together, I don't want to go to someone's house and fake it. So I'm not good at it, right? So for two reasons, I kind of withdrew myself from that situation for, also to hurt him because I know he would want me to be there, but also because I know I'm not going to go to these people's house and put on a fake smile and laugh with them, and when we're not talking to each other when we get home. So
and at the end of the day, I could appreciate that, because at the end of the day, I don't want to be fake. I don't want Sarah to be fake anyway. So it's like, even though it was kind of like a small jab, but I totally understand where she's coming from it.
And sometimes I didn't even know if you saw it as a jab. I'm like, do you see what I'm doing? No. And sometimes I felt like he was like, okay, I'm just gonna go on my own, and I'm like, that wasn't the point. You're supposed to understand that I'm mad at you. Anyway, so we were kind of playing these challenge games. Well, at least I was. Yeah. Do you remember if you dealt with it differently?
Well, for me, like in those situations, it'd be like, especially since we weren't on the same page at the time. For me, it was just like a break. So for me, like, if
what do you mean a break?
A break as far as so if she didn't want to go to somewhere I suggested for us to go as a couple, then for me it was just okay. Look, this is just a little time off from Sarah, and time off only in the sense that it was a distraction from what we're actually going through. So I can at least clear my mind, get a different perspective, and just go somewhere, whether it's a friend's house and watch a football game. At least feel that at least for that time, I'm distracted. And I'm not thinking about these issues that need to be resolved in our relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, so we definitely let it go on for way too long initially, maybe a week, and not talk about it. And for me, it was very hard even bringing up the topic because, as I told you, I already, in my mind, I already knew how it was going to go down, and which was far from reality, but that was just what I had imagined.
And for me, it was hard to bring up the topic, mostly in times where I didn't feel I did anything wrong, or for two, I didn't know what I did wrong. So it could be either or. And last thing I wanted to do was bring up the topic during those times.
Yeah. And I think the hardest thing, I still think now, the hardest thing is initiating that conversation. And then it typically goes smoothly after that, but I don't know why. The initiation,
I think it's because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, and we don't want to. I mean, if I'm wrong, I don't know if you notice that, but if I know I'm wrong, not necessarily, if I know I'm wrong for sure, I feel horrible, and I'm usually like all up on you, I'm hugging you, and you're like, no, well, not all the time, maybe for a little bit, but so if I know for sure I'm wrong, I'm right away, I initiate it. I don't even need time to pass by because I feel horrible. But if I feel like I'm in the right, or if I feel like he's wrong, then I'm kind of like, well, let's wait and see. And that's not healthy at all. And for me, that's very uncomfortable. Like I said, I wear my emotions on my sleeve. So all I think about is this argument, even when I'm at work, even when I'm doing other things. I can't get distracted like Lenard. Anywhere I go, this thought follows me, so I typically stay indoors. I stay home.
Yeah, you definitely isolate yourself.
Yeah, I isolate myself, and until we really resolve the issue.
Yeah, but one thing that we did that I kind of suggested is that we don't go more than 2-3 days without talking to each other, or at least being in that silent treatment type of like atmosphere. Yeah,
and I think when you brought that up along the way in the relationship, I think that was part of the solution, right? Because we both know we have to talk about it.
Yes.
But it's kind of, okay, when?
Yes.
When are we going to do this? Is 3 days acceptable? I feel like it's too long. Just because, I build up. I let everything build up inside of me and I don't release it. So I actually feel like after 1 or 2 days, 2 days is actually long now.
It is.
For us not to talk about it. So typically the next day, we'll probably start out with something a little bit abrupt, like, why are you not feeling me right now? Like, what did I do wrong? And then that helps the other person explain, and then we kind of just talk about how the situation made us feel, and then typically it ends up with an apology and a hug. And then we move
past
on. Yeah, we move past it. Yeah. And one thing that I noticed, I don't know if you notice the same thing, but oftentimes it's the same arguments that come back over and over, but in a different shape or form. So
more so for me doing the same act.
Yeah. So.
Well, compared to you, like for you, it might be like it might be different things, but for me, sometimes it seems to be kind of like a common issue that manifests in different
ways. Yeah. Definitely. Like the root of the problem is the same. It's just a different situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I'm always like, oh, you're so last minute, and then it could be last minute for doing something that's important about filling out papers, or sometimes I feel like when we get ready. I come down and I'm ready, and you're just waiting. And like, but I just have to put on my shirt. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, why didn't you just put on the shirt and wait? Yeah. Why is this so last minute?
I just didn't want to wrinkle my shirt. Really.
Right. Or write the card when we go to a wedding or a baby shower.
Yeah.
You do that in the car, and I'm like, you were watching football for like 15 minutes. Why didn't you? Like in my mind, I'm always like, it's the same issue, but manifests in different ways. And obviously, some things are more benign than others.
Exactly.
So I don't always address them. I just roll my eyes like this. But other things, I just feel like, okay, I just have to say something.
Exactly. And like at the end of the day, we're both different people. I believe that Sarah has a different sense of urgency than I do to certain things. And for me, like I guess my outlook on certain things when I look at the greater scheme of things. At the end of the day, some things are just not that important, but at the end of the day, too, if they affect Sarah in a certain way, I need to be cautious of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of end of the days.
I know there's too many end of the days.
I'm kidding. So that's that. In general, fighting in silence is not the right solution.
No.
If you can address the issue sooner than later, that's probably going to be more effective. I think what's important in any couple is really figuring out how you're going to break the ice, because that's the thing that's most difficult typically when you have an argument and you're giving each other the silence treatment. And when we were doing a marriage counseling, is that what it's called, prior to getting married? This lady actually advised us that, or her and her husband, what they do is that they take an ornament when one person is angry at the other person and they need to discuss something. They take an ornament and place it somewhere in the house specific, so they both can see it and they know that okay, we need to talk about something.
Something needs to be addressed.
Yes. Because I know the words "we need to talk" for a guy.
Scary.
Just like, what did I do? What are we gonna do? I don't want to talk. What does talking mean? Yeah. So I thought that was a good.
And some guys shut down.
Yeah.
From hearing those words.
Yeah, absolutely. So find out what works for you, but definitely somebody needs to break the ice, and the sooner than later is always better. Is always better.
And know that when you're gonna break the ice, that obviously it's gonna be uncomfortable. You will feel vulnerable, but it's something that needs to be done instead of letting it fester over time.
Yeah. Always remember that it's you and your partner against the problem. It's not you guys, each person against each other.
That's a good point.
So just try to attack the problem as, I don't know if I could say objectively as possible, but you want to make sure that you're addressing the issue rather than placing blame.
Yeah, and it's always better to do it when the tempers are down,
right.
When the emotions are low, when you guys are both level-headed and you have time to reflect.
Yes, we didn't mention that, but sometimes addressing the issue the next day rather than in the moment, at least for me, it allows me, not only I create these scenarios, but it also allows me to gather my thoughts, process the information, and I kind of rehearse what I'm going to say so that it comes out a little bit more eloquently rather than just, you did this and you did that, and I think that works best for me.
Right. Well, it definitely does for me too.
Okay. All right. Well, don't fight in silence. Fight loudly. Resolve the issues. And that should help your relationship.
Exactly. Fighting in silence is very toxic, so just find a way to try and break the ice and address the issue right away.
All right. Well, hope this helped, and we hope that we're not the only couple fighting in silence.
Yeah.
And as always, let us know what other topics you'd like for us to talk about. And until next time, keep watching, like, comment, subscribe.
And please give us some more suggestions as far as topics that you'd like to hear.
All right.
Until next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.